Hey Amanda, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
All right. Amanda, are you a veterinarian?
Yes,
Cool.
I am indeed.
I have a potential mentor that might be helpful to you.
Wonderful. I'll
He's
take any and all mentors.
he's a retired large animal veterinarian. Um, he was a very interesting guy. I just met him this past weekend, and he might be willing to help us. It'd be great if he did.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, he let's see. I know so. Oh, okay, I see it now. Um, he worked a lot with hunter jumper
Mhm.
people. He's from the Bay Area, California, and uh, was Neil Young's veterinarian, which I thought was pretty cool. But he might be helpful, so I'll have to reach out to him.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank
these people's their house was the stables, right? So you walk in the front door, and there's 12 stables uh, underneath their house. I never seen anything like it.
you. A lot of horse people do that for insurance. I mean, number one, it's convenient, but for insurance reasons,
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's cheaper to insure a barn with a house on top than a barn without a house on top.
yeah. Apparently, I just had never seen anything like that. So it was pretty cool. I found it to be very interesting. My wife is a horse person, so she was in heaven. Of course, they had I think they have five horses at this point. Three of them are retired from their hunter jumper days, and one is a 33-year-old pony of their daughters, it's going strong. And then the other one they have, they currently ride. Yes. Uh, so yeah,
Are they in Southern Pines?
they are.
You see more houses on barns in Southern Pines than anywhere I've ever seen.
It was truly amazing to me as a non-horse person to see the extent that these folks went. It's just I don't know, mind blowing.
It is a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, those stables are nicer than my house. You know,
I know.
it's pretty
I know.
pretty crazy. All stone archways and brick, and just phenomenal, phenomenal. Okay. Well, hey everybody. Hey Allison. How are you?
Good. Good.
All right. Donna, Judy.
Good afternoon.
Hey,
Hello,
Yolanda.
everybody.
Hey. It's kind of like elementary school. Now tell us about your day.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Well, thank you for gathering, and I think I'll go ahead and get started. So today, we're going to finish up at least a big part of category design, which we've been talking about. And it's all in the context of branding, brand positioning, and figuring out where you fit in the mind's eye of your customer, which is what this is all about. What you're doing and kind of how you fit into their thinking about what you're doing. And I think it's helpful to know what your brand stands for and why you stand for what you do, but also what category are you competing in? What are other members of that category? Or perhaps you're in a category of your own. That would be ideal as well. So I am going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Okay, let's see here. To know what your brand stands for and why you stand for what you do, but also that. And okay, so here we go. We're going to start off with I think we finished yesterday with think different, not just better. So even if we overlap a little bit, I'm gonna start here.
Now, if any of you haven't read this book, one of my favorite books ever about technology, Where Good Ideas Come From by Stephen Johnson, who's a guy based here in New York. And Stephen, he started with this, and he's a friend of mine, by the way, too, and he started the work on this book just with the idea that if you go back in time, back 100 years, 150 years, before there was a lot of communication around the world, great inventions tended to pop up in different parts of the world where nobody could have possibly known what everybody else was doing. The car was being developed in the US and Europe at the same time. The flight was being developed in the US and Europe at the same time by people who had no idea what the others were doing. Why is that possible? Why did those things pop up at the same time? And he started doing research, and he landed on this idea of the adjacent possible, which looks like this. So if you imagine, on this axis over here is what technology can do. And so, down here is stuff that's proven, the television and radio, or those, obviously those things down here. And somewhere up here is stuff that we think technology can do someday. It's, it's pie in the sky stuff. It's, it's holograms and crazy blockchain ideas, or somewhere just a little beyond what technology can do. And along this axis down here is what society adopts and can accept. So, in this part here are things that we readily use in our lives. We got email, we watch TV, all those things. And out here are things that we're not ready for. You can introduce that product, but we're not quite ready for it. And imagine way out here somewhere is like basically science fiction. It's teleportation, sits out there. So Stephen Johnson's point about the adjacent possible is that all of the great world-changing inventions tend to come in this thin line, just outside of what's already, what technology can provably do and what society provably wants to adopt, but not so far out that we don't quite get it yet, or not so far out that the technology is still sketchy. And what happens in this thin band right here is it's usually a combination of a bunch of things that exist already. So it's not, and the minivan is a perfect example of that, right? It wasn't like this radical, like new bubbly invention of a car or a flying car or anything like that would sit way out here somewhere. But it wasn't just, let's take a Volkswagen van and put nicer seats in it. It was something that took a bunch of pieces that were already here and were already in here and just took it outside this line a little bit so that it seemed new and it seemed to solve a problem that didn't exist before, and it seemed to push the technology or the capabilities just a little bit, but not so far out that it seemed crazy. And that's important because, I've seen, through my career, I've seen like probably 1,000 startups. I've sat with them, and I would say half of them are creating something that sits out here somewhere. That you go, and actually one of my co-authors for the book was Al Ramadan, and I first met Al in the 1990s because he started a company called Quokka Sports, and Quokka Sports had this idea of basically putting sports online and creating a new experience by adding a lot of data to what was flowing in, and being able to watch it on on the web. Everything about what Quokka Sports was doing was right. 10 years too soon, because we didn't have we still had dial-up modems. There was just and the way that people thought wasn't quite there yet. Like I want to watch this stuff on my laptop, and so Quokka was a breakthrough company. Like NBC and other companies signed contracts with them. They thought it was really cool. But as soon as the tech crash started to happen in the early 2000s, it went out of business because it didn't have the kind of adoption here, and the technology couldn't quite do it yet. And so we see that all of the time. It just sat too far out here somewhere. So the great new categories are, in fact, just a little bit outside of what already exists. So just to walk you through a little bit about on the back end, what category design, what category thinking can actually do for companies. This was a company called Big Panda that's based out in Silicon Valley, and Big Panda was a very deep B2B business. It was basically making dashboards that data centers could use to correlate alerts that were coming in and sort them out. There's a bunch of other companies in the space. They were about 4 years old, venture-backed. And this is what their website looked like, and this is how they described what they do. It automatically correlate your alerts, which didn't separate them from anybody else that was doing the same thing and didn't sound all that exciting. But they had decent business in it, and they had some realization at the company that because we were correlating alerts, we had this enormous amount of data coming through our system. And they started to think, well, if we added some, we could throw that through some machine learning algorithms to start to understand more about what was going on, and maybe even start to automate the fixes to some degree in the just without having any humans having to touch it. They had all these big ideas, but they didn't quite know how to describe it, how to put it all together. So we worked with them and pulled it out of them, and they all started to, the concept and the missing spaces started to correlate in their brains, and they ended up coming up with this idea of autonomous digital operations, and a way to establish themselves as something that seemed different in the marketplace. And the analysts start to look at them differently, the marketplace starts to look at them differently, and it's a way to create essentially. At the start, one of the things it creates is at least it creates a conversation. They were able to go in and say, this is what we do. It's different from what everybody else is doing. Let's have a conversation about it and be able to tell you about it. And it's really kind of giving them a whole new direction. Now, Sensity was a company that made LED lights. And they had this insight that Philips and GE and everybody else who's making LED lights had, which is that you've got a light and you can put some circuitry in there and some sensors and get some data and some information out of it, and maybe do things like connect and have a smarter home kind of situation. But they also realized that if you networked a lot of these things together, you could collect an enormous amount of data and analyze it, and the data would actually be more valuable than the lights. And so they came to this concept called light sensory networks, and really sold it more as a data play than a light bulb play. And went to like owners of malls, for instance, and said, if you put all these bulbs in and connect them together, you could collect all this data about like the traffic going in and out, or air quality, anything else you wanted to understand about what was going on around your business. And that put them in a completely different bucket that made them look more like a tech company, a data company, a networking company. And about a year and a half later, what happened was they got bought not by GE or Philips at the valuation of a light bulb maker. They got bought by Verizon at a valuation of a technology company, of a data company, of a machine learning company. So the question is, when in a company's life cycle does it make sense to do this or think this way? And the question is, anytime. And I could cite all sorts of examples of any range of time frame. Now, yes, Airbnb, 5-Hour Energy, those were started by seeing a missing space, a category that could be created, and develop the product to that category. Big Panda, company that was 4 years old, already had done essentially what the company was started to do and got to a point of being stuck. Like, where do we take this next? And that's a good time to do it. We just worked with TaskRabbit. I'm sure many of you know TaskRabbit. And TaskRabbit was 10 years old and pretty successful in what it had been doing. But it realized that it had kind of stalled, it had done the same thing for 10 years, and knew that there was something still missing in the market, and a bigger and better way to do what they were doing and make it seem, and feel new again. And so that was, for them, that was a good time to do it. When IBM was 50 years old in 1964, when it introduced the System 360 computer, which was actually probably one of the greatest technology category, it basically created the category of the mainframe in 1964 by introducing this radical line of computers and junking its entire product line that it already had. It was 50 years old at the time. So companies can do this at any time in their history. It's just, and some companies are great at doing it over and over again. Some companies do it from the beginning. Could be anytime, yes. But basically, the question was, can a startup do this? First of all, a couple answers. Just from our experience, from what we have seen, as we've talked to companies over, and about this whole idea of category design, fintech, healthcare, you name an industry that sounds difficult and established, it doesn't matter. There's new spaces and new opportunities in every single industry that's out there. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen companies come to us and have this experience. If you go into any established market and say, we're going to do essentially what they're already doing, but just a little bit better, then yeah, you're fighting the big guys. If you go into an established market with something that feels completely new and different, as many of you I'm sure have seen, when you're fighting a big corporation, an established company, they can't move that fast. They can't do these things oftentimes, and so the startups actually, take share away from them by doing the things that they can't do, that they can't figure out and can't manage to pull off right away. And as for a startup versus established company, yes, when an established company sees a new space, they can put all these resources behind it, but it's also really hard for them to do this kind of. Now, Chrysler, the minivan story happened because Chrysler's back was against the wall. They could take a chance on a $0 billion market. Ford and General Motors at the time had all the same demographic data, all the same, capabilities, technology capabilities, manufacturing capabilities as Chrysler did at the time. They weren't willing to take a chance on something like that because they weren't desperate. And so what you often see with larger corporations, big companies, is that they're not willing to take those kinds of chances. They're more likely to try to incrementalize and just add, be a little bit better in some particular category that exists. And what we tell companies, and Mike is going to talk a little bit about this later, with something we call suit size. If you create a suit that's way too big for you and it's a brilliant category, what you're doing is you're doing somebody else a favor, because you're not going to be able to pull it off, and somebody else is going to see that and go, Google's going to say, we could do that. And so with this startup, we walk them back, and again, this is coming from them. It's us, helping pull it out of them. We're not telling them this, but walk them back to what can you do that's on the path towards that. Keep that big thing in your pocket for now, but try to establish some new category that takes you on a path to that bigger thing, and know that you're going to take it in steps as you grow and get the capabilities. But yeah, the suit size concept, and Mike will talk about that in this next session, is really important, because you can't, as a startup, do something that's so enormous that it's like trying to take over Google or something. It's not going to happen. So one of the basic principles, it all comes back to the idea that companies that design a category and convince people that that's a category that they establish in people's minds, and you're the king, you're in the best position to dominate it over time. And that's basically the concept of the book Play Bigger, and what we take companies through and try to work with them on. And so that's this first part of the presentation. And thank you very much.
All right, let's just take a second to go over a couple of things. First of all, anybody have any general comments or stuff they want to talk about based on what they've seen so far?
I like what he had to say about being right outside that line with a new product or a new invention.
Yeah. I
So
thought that was good. It makes it seem like less of a leap, right?
right.
You're not going way out into the ionosphere. You're just incrementally to the next level. So I agree with you.
Would it be best to position yourself with some basic products and then tack on that new invention afterwards, or does it matter?
I think it just depends on you, right? And what you want to do. Remember, we've talked a lot about why are you doing what you're doing. So it's not about, should I do this or should I do that? Why are you doing it? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And I think if you tune into that and stay true to that,
Hmm.
the answer will become clear.
So marketing wise, it's irrelevant, just based on what your goal and purpose is, just go with that and
I
it'll
think
flow.
so. That's how I've always operated. And I'd say don't look for me for, I think that, well, what I got out of this that I hadn't really thought about before, one was, first of all, I think just about everyone in this class, I could be wrong, but I believe the majority are not really true startups. You've been doing something for a while. And what I found interesting when I really thought about it was the idea that a company like IBM, right, 50 years into their business, 50 years, they threw everything away and started something new with mainframes in 1954 or whatever it was. I think that's pretty astounding if you really think about it. And, for many of you, you may find yourself thinking like, well, I started this for the following reason, but now I'm thinking about something else. Does that mean you stop doing what you're doing and just start something new? I don't think so. I think you can move in a direction that you want to move, and it doesn't have to be, sudden or extreme. But don't be afraid to think about how doing something different might actually help you with your why. What may actually help you meet your goals. Don't be closed down, no matter how invested you are in what you're doing. Try to keep that mentality of, hey, this might get me there better, faster, sooner, more profitably, whatever the reasons are. I thought that was really good. And I think also, he started off the talk with talking about these companies doing things that lots of other companies did, right? So they were in a mix or in an industry where there were multiple companies doing the same thing. So arguably, they didn't necessarily change what they were doing, but they changed the way they described it. They changed the way they positioned it. In the case of that, the first example, they really kept doing what they were doing. They just called it something different and changed their website and got it so that industry analysts and the public thought about them in a different way, even though I would argue they're probably not that different than what they were doing. So occupying the mind space of your prospect or your customer is important. And I don't think you can overstate that if you're in a place, for example, and you feel like, well, there's lots of people doing what I'm doing, so you can compete on price, you can compete on packaging, you can compete on any number of things, but you also can compete by creating a new category and becoming a player in that category. And then all these folks who are, quote, doing the same thing you are, they may choose to enter the category, but they'll be behind you because you've created the category and you've defined the category. This whole idea of a category king, I think, is really good. So that's just a couple things. So what we're going to do now is the next step. Well, first of all, on that series that we just saw, there are a number of exercises there as well below the videos. So if you want to get into that, you can. Now what we're going to get into is actually implementing category design. What's a strategy for implementing? So we're going to look at some of this, and I think you'll find it to be very, very helpful in taking this theory that we've been talking about into actual strategy. How do I actually do this? So let me do that. Okay. And here we go.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike Damphouse, partner at Category Design Advisors. Today we're going to talk about category design best practices for those of you that want to roll your own project. We obviously do it for a living, but a lot of companies can't afford to pay us what we'd like to command So we're going to show you how to do it. And hopefully you can work with your team and create your own category. So before we start, how many people in this room walked in here today thinking category design is about messaging and positioning? Pretty common. Category design is not marketing. But category design is not positioning and branding. In fact, if I'm talking to a company, especially if the CMO calls me first, and they start talking about messaging and branding and positioning, I basically say, give the book to your CEO and we'll talk in 2 weeks. Category design is a company strategy, and CEOs see that. And if you remember, marketing is traditional, compete with your competition, say why you're better. Our software is this much faster than your software. Category design is about marketing the problem. You market the problem, then you worry about the solution and communicate that. And if you don't set yourself aside as different, you're just another player in the market. And that's what category design is all about. You're creating a new place in people's minds to put you, and a new way for them to realize they have a problem that maybe they didn't know they had. It's company strategy. Kevin went over this in the overview presentation, but essentially most companies focus on product design and company design. Adding category design to this actually treats all the other aspects of running your company in a way that you focus on category. Every decision you make, whether it's a marketing decision or an engineering decision, even a hiring decision, category is going to give you a different way to position your decision making in a company and running a company. It's making decisions. When we talk to potential clients, it's funny. They look at the contract and they say, oh, what are you going to deliver to us? And it's like, oh, well, we're going to deliver a category name. We're going to deliver a point of view. We're going to deliver a category thesis. We're going to deliver a lightning strike plan. And the biggest deliverable is going to be helping you make decisions. And they always think that's ethereal. They're like, you're going to help us make decisions? But every project we've done, and yesterday was a great example, company just acquired another company. First time the executive team was in a room together, the whole day was nothing but making decisions. And those decisions are going to lead you to creating the best category you can create. So where do we start? Two people in a basement come up with an idea, write a little demo code, go to AWS and create a prototype, and then they say, what are we going to do? What's our mission in life? Start with, this is in the book, start with Dave's 3 questions. This is Dave Peterson, one of the other co-authors of Play Bigger. And Dave's 3 questions are pretty straightforward. Essentially, the first one is, what problem do you solve? Second, if you solve that problem, what is the category? And third, if you build a category, how big is it? So let's look at it. First thing you want to do is focus on the problem. A lot of people focus on the solution. But what you want to do is focus on the problem. And think to yourself, is this a market insight? A technology insight? Uber was a market insight. We are sick of riding in dirty, stinky cabs. They don't come by when I need them. How nice would it be if I clicked on my phone and actually got a car to show up for me? Technology insight, VMware. We have all this computing power sitting in our IT centers. What if we could harness that and create multiple virtual machines? Technology insight. And then lastly, what's the emotional aha? What will your customers understand and be felt like they're getting punched in the gut, that they have a problem they need to solve? And if you think that way, you're going to end up being able to focus on the solution in such a way that you're going to develop the products differently, you're going to communicate to the market differently, because people understand their problems. If you're having to educate them on your solution, they're not listening. Here's a great example. Bill Gates. In the late 90s, and I remember when it came out because I wanted one, they announced the tablet. And all the tablet was a notebook computer that you flipped down and you had a flat screen and you could touch it. And the way he communicated this to the market was, you can walk around with this and you can do things on it with your finger. Then you had Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, when he announced the iPad, he essentially said, look, we all have computers, we all have cell phones. There's something in the middle. And that new category is the iPad, is the way he introduced it. It's on YouTube, you can watch it. But what's interesting is the iPad is still a flat computer that you manipulate with your finger. But it was focused on consuming media, reading, watching videos, just quickly while you're sitting in your living room, picking it up, looking at the news, or look at your calendar for tomorrow. And it took off like wildfire. He focused on the problem. You have a clunky computer and you have a little phone. What if I give you something a little bit more comfortable to work with? Still just a tablet. Bill Gates missed it. Second of Dave's question, what is the category? So a category is a container where people store the problem and solution that you've mapped out for them. And those cognitive biases actually cause the category to be ingrained in their thinking, and therefore they're more inclined to buy your products. The category name is not that important to the whole process of cognitive biases, believe it or not. Category name should be utilitarian. People should be able to use it. If you create a category called Intelligent Security IT Specialty Platforms, who the hell's ever going to say that? And if they acronymize it, you're never going to know what it means, right? Whatever that was, ITMSBC, whatever. So basically, think of the category name as your best attempt to label your category. It should be good and concise, but it's not going to end your project if you're trying to create your own category. Here's a perfect example of something simple and obvious. Noise cancellation headsets. It says exactly what it does. Everyone knows what a headset is. It cancels out the noise. And if I said to you, what brand of noise cancellation headsets do you buy? Most people in the room are going to say Bose. And that's because they established the category. Don't lose sleep over developing a category name. We just did a project. It went 3 months. We like to come up with a name kind of in the middle of the process. We didn't come up with the name until the day of the lightning strike planning. It was just getting in the way. And if it gets in the way, it'll prevent you from thinking through all the issues that take you to the category point of view, which we're going to talk about. It's just a name. Here's a tip. This is something we do in projects once in a while. If you're stuck on a category name, or your co-founders and executive team are sitting in a room and everyone's debating what makes sense, hand out yellow stickies to everybody and say, put down 5 words that you think should influence a category name. Have them do it, everyone writes them down. I say, okay, now rank them from 5 to 1. So everybody ranks them. They choose the word they thought of first. It always puts a 5 in. Then take those words, build a spreadsheet. And if a word is ranked as a 5, put that word in 5 times. If it's ranked as a 2, put it in twice. And then do that for all the yellow stickies and keep building this spreadsheet, and then copy it into a word cloud generator. And then you look at it and you can visually get some creative ideas on what words might make sense. Here, connected is important, intelligence important. What's interesting is the word that the client was focusing on was advertising. And this exercise caused them to throw it out the window. Trademark. Everybody wants to protect everything they do. IP lawyers live in big houses and have big boats. Category design, you don't protect it. It's a gift to the world. You want your competitors to use your category. If people don't think of the category as just a prolific common thing, then it'll be yours and you'll be the only one that has it. And sure, Google will put you at the top every time, but your competitors and the analysts and Gartner, they'll never create a magic quadrant titled my category name if it's trademarked. So come up with something general and think about your competitors. What category should we create that's going to be different? You're going to be able to educate the market, and you'll eventually, because of the way category design works, you'll become the leader. But if you protect it so much that nobody else wants to touch it, then you're going to fail. You'll fall on your face. Now, if you have a lawyer or if you have technology that is very protectable, it's IP, you're just, whoops, falling on your face when you tell your lawyer, we don't want to trademark this or register it. There's a process called provisional trademarking. So this is the out. If you got an investor that demands you to do this, file a provisional trademark application, then just put it in the drawer. And in 3 years, when your competitor goes to try to register it, you can pull it out and it's yours.
Okay. So this gets into more practical, how do you actually do this? And we're gonna finish up this section tomorrow. But I think it's very exciting to think that you might be able to find a category and become the dominant player in that category, or at least help you refine your brand message and your brand positioning, which we've talked about also. So we're very fortunate to have access to this material. Thanks to Techstars for giving it to us. I feel a little guilty just streaming videos to you, but these people cost a lot of money if we were trying to get them live. So this is the best we can do given our format. So I will open it up to any questions or ideas that anyone has on the subjects that we've been talking about. Anybody got anything?
I have a question. I honestly don't even know how to phrase it, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. So I'm wondering how widely known this information really is. I mean, it's great information. It seems like common sense when you hear it, but nobody really thinks about these things unless you're actually hear someone, talk like that. I'm just wondering how widely available is this really? And if everybody, especially like bigger businesses, already know about these things, how do you go out and compete with everybody who's doing this? If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, well, there's really a couple parts to your question. The first is, how many people know about this? And I will tell you that if you are in Silicon Valley or you're in the venture capital world, this is all you think about. It permeates my days as an investor. This is just a common way of, if you think about it, all these companies are coming to you for money and you've got to sort them out. You got to figure out what are they, right? So the knowledge is somewhat limited to people who really have a reason to know it, I guess would be the way to put it. And then the second part of your question was, since all these big companies know this, how do we compete? You compete by figuring out where your brand fits in the category, or if your brand is its own category. It really doesn't matter how big or small someone is that you're quote competing with. What you're really competing with is the consumer that you're trying to get to buy your product. So many successful executives that I have known over the years, they pay no attention to their competitors, or they have someone on their team whose job it is to mark the competitors, but they really don't think much about it. They think much more about their own metrics, their own velocity, product sales, new introductions, telling their story. So it doesn't really matter if someone's big or little. It's really about what is your what problem are you solving? What's your brand positioning? And what category are you in? And all that other stuff is tertiary, in my opinion, or secondary. It doesn't really matter. Easy for me to say, I'm not out competing with them, but that's how I feel about it. That helps, Anna?
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Allison?
I really like how he sort of changed my thinking because I'm thinking marketing all the time. But it's the company strategy is focus on the problem. You know, what is the market insight? What problem are you addressing? And I think if you look at what you feel like that you're solving in the marketplace, that will, if you just focus on that, and all the rest will fall into place, I would imagine.
Well, I think focusing on the marketing, on the market solution, the problem you're solving, is really goes back to your why. What is your why, right? And I think it goes back to that. Why are you doing this? It's because you see a problem and you can solve it, and it's important to you. But I think it's important to think about how your brand is perceived. How do consumers consume your brand, right? Consume your story, your packaging, your whole brand experience. So yes, it is important to focus on the problem you're solving, but it's also important to actually figure out the best way to solve the problem, and what tools do you have and processes do you have that will help you with that objective. And even, especially in consumer product goods, things like packaging are huge. You think, well, it's just a package, right? But actually, that there's hardly anything more important than your package, right? Because no one will even give you a chance to solve their problem if they don't find it appealing or they don't get it, for the communication from the packaging. So I wish I could wrap it all up with a simple do this and don't worry about everything else, but unfortunately I can't do that. Not in good conscience anyway. Anyone else want to throw it out there? Okay. Well, as always, you can reach out to me, my email or the Facebook group or whatever. And I encourage you to continue to pursue Shop Rural Day if you can. I think there's going to be a lot of great opportunities there, and to meet new people and be exposed to maybe a whole different market segment than you've experienced so far. At least that's my hope. And that's all I have for today. We'll finish up category design tomorrow. You'll know how to do it, and I think it'll get you excited about how you might go about this and how you can really set yourself apart from your perceived competitors and your actual competitors. So, all right.